of Luke, the 21st chapter. This is during what we now call Holy Week, the time between Jesus' triumphal entry on Palm Sunday and between the Last Supper. And so it's towards the end of Jesus' time on earth, and he says, "There will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and on earth distress among nations confused by the roaring of the seas and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." Then he told them a parable. "Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is already near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly, I tell you this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Be on guard so that your hearts are not weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life, and that can catch you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that will take place and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord. I invite you to be seated. As we begin this time of Advent together, this journey of reflection and journey of thanks as we take these 4 weeks before Christmas, and we light the candles and we do all of these things. I remember as a kid we had the little Advent calendars. Did you have those when you were kids? You know, and every day we wanted to open the Advent calendar and see what the Bible verse was or what the little thing was behind the little door. And so I hope that many kids today still do that. I don't know. It's been a while since we had a kid that age to do Advent calendars. But as we begin this time, it's not only a joyous time where we can drive over to Clark Court and see all the beautiful houses decorated. It's not only the time that we can go to the mall and see the beauty with which they decorated the malls and put up with that stuff. But, you know, if you do that, if you go to the mall or you go to Walmart or something, I always encourage you, be a part of the joy. Make it more joyful by your own presence of being there. And if somebody bumps you, say, "Oops, but have a Merry Christmas." And you might make their day simply by saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But as we begin this time, as we sit here today, question I have for you that kind of fits with the gospel lesson is, what are the biggest challenges that we as human beings, the whole world full of human beings, what are the biggest challenges that we face as humanity? I'm looking for suggestions here. Loving one another. Respecting one another. Helping one another. Being humble. You guys have much better answers than I did. I had that our biggest challenges are war. I mean, we have wars going on in Syria and Afghanistan and who knows how many other places that don't even make the news. You know, wars between tribes in Africa and war own streets, between gangs and things like that. Economic inequality is something that we have challenges with around the entire world. We have challenges with prejudice based on race or religion or gender or, we have prejudice for just about any reason we can think of to make ourselves different from somebody else. So these are the things that I think, and the things that you mentioned, are the things that are the biggest challenges to humanity today. And they all have one root. Now, why isn't this working? Okay. I did turn it on. Maybe the battery, I dropped it. That's what I did, is I dropped it. Maybe I got the battery on. Anyway, fear is at the root of all of these things that are challenges for humanity. So we talked about those things. Fear of being humble. You can't be too humble because you'll be run over. Fear of, what was yours, Vicki? Fear of loving the other, because loving the other might mean that I have to love a Muslim, or I have to love a Sikh with a turban, or I have to love somebody of another color or another gender way of looking at life. We've got fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what it would be like if we didn't have war. If we just sat down and had conversation and didn't have all of the divisions that we have. But it's not only those big fears are fears that we can work on individually. But what are the individual things that keep us up at night? What are the individual things that most people worry about, that we fear? Money. Most of us are not independently wealthy. Health. We worry about health, don't we? Where is my friend Paul? He's got health problems, right? Where is my friend Ann? She's got more health problems than we can imagine. Just an update on her that Ed gave me today. She still cannot open her eyes and still can't really respond, other than I guess she squeezes her hip once in a while, right? That she's not doing well. And so we pray for Ann. So health is something that we worry about, and money is something that we worry about. And for almost everybody here, we worry about children and grandchildren, don't we? And those worries are based on fear. If I'm worrying about my grandbabies, I'm fearful for what the world has in store for them. Or I'm fearful that they're starting to walk now, and they're going to fall and hit their head on something. They're coming for Christmas. So we're just starting to baby-proof the house out of fear that they're going to, who knows what two just barely walking monstrous little boys can do in a house that isn't set up for monstrous little boys. So what's the antidote to fear? Is trust. Is trust that in the end, God is with us. God doesn't promise us that the little boys aren't going to bump their heads, but God promises us that God is going to be with us. He says in the gospel lesson for today, I'll just point it at you, Darla, and you make it work. So, Jesus says, there's going to be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and on earth distress from the roaring oceans and the waves. Those are not things that I think we worry about. At least I don't worry about the stars and the moon. They're up there. God's going to take care of them. But Jesus gives a picture of things coming to an end. And then he says, when you see these things begin to take place, stand up, raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. It's a promise. It's a promise that when the world seems to be coming down around our ears, that God is with us. And within these fears, within these worries, within these challenges of daily life, we can stand up and raise our heads and not be afraid, because Jesus is with us. He said later in this text, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. He says this again in this time between Palm Sunday and Good Friday. And he knows what is coming. His disciples don't quite get it yet, but they sense something new and something different, and something has changed, and they don't necessarily like it. But Jesus in this whole time, throughout this week, is giving specific promises to his disciples. Okay? On that last night, he takes the bread and he breaks it and he gives thanks and he says, this is my body given for you. This is my blood that's shed for you. This is Jesus' promise of his continued and very real presence in the life of the disciples and the life of his followers for the ages to come. That in that meal that we share every Sunday, that Jesus promises without fail that he will be with us, that he is with us and in us and works through us, so that we can be there for others when they need us, and others can be there for us when we need them. On the cross, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. His forgiveness is real. His forgiveness is without strings. His forgiveness is no matter what. His promise that when things are going bad, his forgiveness is there for when we have messed up. Again on the cross, he says, today you will be with me in paradise. What a great promise. A promise that Christ gives us, that when it's over, when it is done, that we will have rest and comfort and be in the presence of the angels and the archangels, along with all of the saints before us in the presence of God, and have that joy that we can't even imagine for all of eternity. And then Easter. He comes before the disciples in the upper room. The doors were locked, and he says, peace be with you. Peace be with you. That the resurrection spells an end to death and the cycle of violence and revenge. That Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, the one who came, who lived and showed us God's love and how to love one another, and died and rose again for us, puts an end to those things that we worry about most. He puts an end to. And then finally, not the last promise he ever made, but the last one we're going to talk about today. You are witnesses to these things. So you are called, he says to the disciples, and he says to us, you are called to a faithful work in your day-to-day life until that end shall come. You are witnesses to these things, the things that Jesus did, and they're worthy of telling. The story of Jesus in God's grace is a story that's worthy of being told. It's a story that we can tell each and every day simply with our actions and our reactions. How we handle situations when we're in and with those who have far less than we do, whether that be financially or emotionally or spiritually. How do we handle those situations? Take one or more of these promises. Take them and run with it. Have fun with it. Grab hold of it and share it with others. And as Christ says, stand up and raise your heads because your redemption draws near. Amen. Let's stand and sing Healer of